when I mention Holocaust, folks go, okay, yeah, that was a bad thing. Yeah, don't want it to happen ever again. And if we are thinking that it's gonna ever get stopped from being mentioned, Spielberg's gonna make certain it never stop. And I'm not mad, because we should also always remember Holocaust so that it's never repeated. But it's an okay thing to say. You following me? It's an okay thing to talk about. So even though you have some folks that may wrinkle, they know better than to publicly act badly about it. But the bottom line is you get to talk about it. You even get to talk about indigenous folks, Aboriginal people here, as well as Aboriginal people in other parts of the world and their suffering. We can talk about just about everybody, when you say slavery, it is amazing the response that happens. So just the response. Come on now. You're not going to mention it. Come on, I mean, get over it. You know, you're free now. You know, it's an amazing, and that was the first thing that really jumped out at me was just the behavior. Black, white people, all of it, because you have black people. And I spoke at Oxford, you know, because you have to be acceptable. You know, like he was saying, he checked on the singers because we don't like black people to get up and try to sing the cane. Okay? And black people take you down. Okay, we don't play that. So similarly, you know, here I am. I'm at Oxford. You know, I'm representing. For, of course, the university, I'm representing a lot of levels, and you have black scholars who are trying to figure out, because they saw my topic, but they didn't know if they were going to sit next to me at dinner. Because they weren't certain that they wanted to be alive, because they were concerned about how white people were going to respond.
Good people, one of the biggest trick systems of oppression ever pulled was convincing people that history is dead, you know, that slavery is just one old chapter, that colonization is just ancient history, that we should move on, you know, forget about colonization, that ended, slavery ended, you know, just move on, stop thinking about it. But as Dr. Joy DeGruy explains in her works post traumatic slave syndrome, trauma does not simply disappear because time passes by, you know, systems evolve, they mutate, they rebrand by themselves, but deep down, the same blueprint of oppression, of injustice, of inequalities and unfairness still hold. You know, it's just the surface that changes. Now, let's go into some history class, and I'll be back with some more commentary at the end.
Looking menacingly at a white woman. Vagrancy, loitering. 10, 15 years for that. Here's the kicker. 25% of people under convict lease died. More than during slavery, because you don't kill off your property that you need to work for you. But they didn't have any protections because they have another label, do they not? And when you're going to oppress or subjugated people, what must you do? You must justify by relabeling them, but not only are they black, genetically inferior, lustful, careless, governed by caprice, but now they're criminals, which then justifies what we do. So 25% of them died under convict lease. But look at how lucrative it was. Convict leasing was so successful that by 1898, nearly 3/4 of Alabama's total state revenue came directly from this institution. So did the trauma continue? But y'all free, right? Let's move on. So then we had, oh Lord, we got it now. Separate but equal. Is it equal now, friends? Still separate, though. You know what the Negroes are? Well, we're doing gentrification in Portland, but you know, we know what the black folk are, don't we? You know where to find them, right? There's no, you know, sign on the freeway that says next left hood. But we know when we're there, don't we?
Keep it real.
Okay. Separate, never equal. And that's contemporary, right? Now we're going to get to where am I in time? You don't have a concept of that. Where are we? Where's the time person? Where am I in time?
You got 25 more minutes.
Excellent. So I wanted to endeavor to look at some of the more difficult pieces because I really wanted to take a look at some things that, I tell you, this moves into chapter 3. I need to talk about J. Marion Sims. Could you find his picture? J. Marion.
have come earlier?
Yes, he came earlier. You'll find it. He cleans up nice. J. Marion Sims, let me tell you a little bit about Jay. How many people, you know him, you know. There are huge statues and edifices for this man. Great thing. How many people in the room know what a vaginal speculum is? For those young men or men in the room that we lost you there, what a vaginal speculum is, it's an instrument that was created to open up the vagina so folks could kind of peer in. Now, J. Marion Sims is the individual credited with that creation, and he is touted as being the wealthiest physician to have ever lived. J. Marion Sims was a physician in the mid-1800s, credited with the creation of the first vaginal speculum, which he made from a pewter spoon. Sims had built a makeshift hospital in his backyard where he conducted surgical experiments on unanesthetized African slave women. Sims reasoned that slave women were able to bear great pain because their race made them more durable, and thus they were well suited for painful medical experimentation. So this is someone who took an oath to do no harm. And he cut into black women without any anesthesia. Now let me kind of get close with you around why this becomes very important. J. Marion Sims becomes very important because the first question I asked was, first of all, where do all the women come from? How did he get them? And what the problem was is it would be said that these women were not fit for duty by their slave masters. And here's why they weren't fit for duty. Many of the women suffered from what was called a fistula. An obstetric fistula is the breakdown of tissue in the vaginal wall, frequently as a result of childbirth, which affects the bladder and or the rectum. The disorder causes leakage of urine and feces into the vagina, which made for a smelly and humiliating existence for the women. However, this condition did not preclude these slave women from participating in their daily work on the plantation, such as picking cotton, house cleaning, cooking, etc. So what duty were the women then unfit for? The obvious answer is that while black slave women were required to do manual labor alongside their black male counterparts, one of their other inescapable duties was to sexually serve their slave masters. Their malodorous condition made them less sexually desirable, and thus they were unfit for duty. So you need to clean them up, Marion Sims, so we can do them. But what's more important about this is how we justify. Remember, in order to oppress or subjugate, you have to justify that behavior. But it wasn't only the women that suffered under his reign. Could you show the all, please? Slave women were not the only group to suffer. Black infants represent the most innocent of Sims' victims. Black infants suffered from what he termed trismus nascentium, now commonly referred to as neonatal tetanus. Tetanus originates in horse manure. The likely cause of the disease, enslaved infants, given their living condition and their proximity to animal stables. Sims attributed the condition to the indecency and intellectual flaws of the black slaves, together with skull malformations at birth. Sims attempted to treat this malady by trying to pry the bones in the skulls of the tiny infants into alignment with a shoemaker's awl. I was careful to find one from the 1800s. He would stick that into the brain and the skulls of black infants at birth in an effort to realign their skulls because of the indecency of their parents. He is worshipped in this medical world, J. Marion Sims. But I was more curious about how a physician could do such a thing. And here's how you do it. You pathologize the people. Now, let me read what they said about black women, because it gets real specific, black women. Their first pathological symptom was their skin color. In a medical world that categorized life as either normal or pathological, people of the African diaspora were continually condemned to the category of pathological, their abnormal skin serving as a foil for normal white skin. Stay with me. The skin, if you see black people, the problem is is the skin itself is pathological because it's actually a foil over normal white skin. This is what medical journals suggested. Now we're going to find out how they named it. Medical tradition has a long history of perceiving this skin color as a form of pathology. The favorite theory, which reappears with some frequency in the early 19th century, is that the skin color and attendant physiognomy of the black, here's the reason why y'all black, is because of congenital leprosy. This is why there's so many of us. We all have congenital leprosy. Now, we have a second symptom. The second symptom of pathology was gender. Black females were perceived to be irreligious, lustful, and immoderate. Well, that's convenient, isn't it? Let's take a look at that. We need to really take a look at this one because I have a whole chapter on rape. Can't even get close to what that did to me. There were over, and comes out of a social work book. In a social work book, it states that there were over 600,000 mixed-race babies born in the mid-1800s, based on the census. Now, this was during miscegenation. That means it's illegal to marry. So who was sneaking out back, and who was raping whom? We have numbers. Young girls rarely made it to their teens before they were raped. But let's put that in perspective as a social scientist. Now, I want to get into that, the fact that we were lustful, because then you see it's their fault, isn't it? Surely I raped them, but didn't they deserve it? Now we need evidence of how we know they're lustful and immoderate and immoral. Here we go. Their protruding buttocks and genitals were offered as physical evidence of their pathology. Anybody up there with a big butt? Anybody with a big butt out there? There you have it, you slut. It's incredulous, isn't it? It's hard for you to even believe it. We see it's in books. And the criminally insane right. But what was so amazing, I want to get right, let's get right up with that one, because the butt thing really threw me off. Because everybody wants that butt now, don't they? Yeah. J-Lo made it, gave us all permission to first have the butt. And it's an African butt, don't get confused about it. And it's a butt they couldn't keep their hands off of. Now they're injecting the butt now. They're putting butts in pants. They're making underwear with a butt in it. In addition to that, injecting the lips with collagen, locking the hair, and telling you the whole time you're ugly. Still looking for the safest tan. Isn't that amazing? And the sad thing about it is we believe we're ugly. Case in point, 2006. Oh yeah, she was cute. She had good hair. Yeah, she had good hair. And he was fine. He was light-skinned. Yeah. Look at the music video. Same girl, isn't it? You might as well just take him over and over again, tragic mulatto. Are you following me? I have people say to me, Joy, are you going natural? Going natural? I mean, you even have black people go, wow, she's militant. And that's because I actually wear my hair the way it grows out of my head. Anybody white in here, everybody go, you're not going to keep it like that, are you? You're going to perm it or something, aren't you? You're not going to just wear it like that, right? I can see your roots, girl. White people don't do that to white people. We have pathologized what is naturally us. And when we would want to assault or insult, you black, big lip, nappy head, stay with me. You see, that's called post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's what that looks like. And then white people go, well, no wonder, look at them. They're so negative. Right? So let's move on. So then after all that, I want to take a look at another piece, because again, when you think of someone that raped and did horrible things, you get the picture of a big gut toothless wonder. A straw hat and, get the boys and go on out there and get them. Well, let's just move and start looking at the impact the strange fruit had. You all know what strange fruit, Billy got in trouble for reporting that one. But let's talk about the strange fruit. And now this is in one isn't in the book, by the way. I didn't put ugly pictures in the book. I'm not interested in re-injuring black people. But I want you to look at this picture, and there's only one reason why I want you to look at it, is I want you to look at who's in it. This is just plain old regular folk. And the way that little girl is looking at that man, she can't be right. That's what's wrong with white people, by the way. It's right there in that picture. Because, see, no one talks about what happened to white people. That's another book. But this is specifically, I show this picture because it's unbelievable. Got the little Sunday best. They ran train excursions and let children out of school early to attend lynchings. Lynchings. Now, let's show the other slide because I want to read this one. It's a rather gruesome one. I want to get you prepared. But I want to read from this one so you can understand what they did at the lynchings. If you want to know the reference to this, you can. I have a reading list in my book. In addition to that, you can go on site on my online with my website, joyleary.com, and it'll give you some suggested readings. The name of the book that I would suggest are two. One is called 100 Years of Lynching. They're all newspaper accounts. That's by Ginsburg. 100 Years of Lynching. No pictures. This one is a famous picture that you will find in a variety of places, but one of them is called Without Sanctuary, recently published, which is a pictorial. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to read from the newspaper account. Before the torch was applied, the Negro was deprived of his ears, fingers, and genital parts of his body. He pleaded pitifully for his life while the mutilation was going on, but stood the ordeal of fire with surprising fortitude. Before the body was cool, it was cut to pieces, the bones were crushed into small bits, and even the tree upon which the wretch met his fate was torn up and disposed of as souvenirs. The Negro's heart was cut into several pieces, as was also his liver. Those unable to obtain the ghastly relics direct paid their more fortunate possessors extravagant sums for them. Small pieces of bone went for 25 cents, and a bit of the liver crisply cooked sold for 10 cents. As soon as the Negro was seen to be dead, there was a tremendous struggle among the crowd to secure the souvenirs. Knives were quickly produced, and soon the body was dismembered. Now I want you to look at who's in the picture. They're crowding to be in it, in suits. So whatever memory or thoughts we had about who these folks were, they were just plain common folk. But Joy, surely, this has no relevance today. Between 1882 and 1967, 200 bills, and Senator Avell Quarterly wouldn't know about this one, 200 bills were presented before Congress to outlaw lynching. Additionally, 7 presidents urged Congress to end the practice. Each and every time these efforts were rejected by the Congress, and lynchings continued unabated and unpunished. It was not until 2005 that the U.S. Senate offered an apology for what it termed domestic terrorism against mostly black people. And even then, folks wouldn't sign on it. So did the trauma continue? Boy, we're an amazing people. We're an amazing people. But we don't know who we are. And you cannot heal what you don't understand. We can't heal it if we won't look at it. So how does it manifest itself? Very quickly, let me go through some of my research, because I'm going to give you some examples of it. There's a chart, and I did work specifically on African-American male youth violence. I didn't want to look at violence, by the way. What I really wanted to look at was something I term in the book vacant esteem, one of the symptoms of post-traumatic slave syndrome. Vacant esteem should not be somehow confused with low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is when you can't do as many chin-ups as maybe your sister or your brother. I'm not talking about that. And I don't think esteem should be measured in terms of low and high, because there are people with perfectly high self-esteem that are assholes. And you have to go to meetings with them, don't you? But they have high self-esteem. They ain't right, though. So I think esteem should be measured in terms of accurate esteem. It's accurate esteem. Do you have an assessment of yourself that is appropriate? Not high or low, accurate, and healthy. So these are things I looked at. I don't want to look at this. I told you, I didn't want to look at violence. Why? Because my committee told me that vacant esteem wasn't a social problem. Clearly, that's not a social problem. A social problem, let me define it. Remember my graduate work. A social problem is a social problem, can be defined as a social problem if a significant number of people believe that it is a social problem, or significant persons believe it is a social problem. And we didn't qualify for either of those, not black people. But let me tell you why I wanted to look at self-esteem. I wanted to look at self-esteem because my first work was with children. I saw things happening with black children that bothered me, disturbed me. Aside from the good hair, bad hair, and all the other ugly, negative black epithets that we would throw at one another that I heard in the contemporary world around me, I was concerned about what I saw happening to the hearts and minds of little black children. And one of the things that I started to notice happened directly after I had come from South Africa in 1994. I went to South Africa on the heels of the inauguration of Nelson Mandela. And it was a tough time in the country. And it was an incredible time for me because it was in a fact for me, in a way, a rebirth, a pilgrimage, a point of normalcy that I never knew because I never knew how to feel normal as a black person in America. This is an article recently published called, it says, "My black skin makes my white coat vanish." This is a doctor who was standing in the lobby and her clients would go, "Where's the doctor?" Right? We're invisible. And I grew up being invisible, discounted on a daily basis. So when I went to Africa, it was the first time in my life it felt normal being black. And so I cried a lot. I cried so much, in fact, the head of the women that I was traveling with got a little through with me. Now there's a reason why they got a little through with me. The reason they got a little through with me is because, see, in South Africa, in this southern region, actually I was in 4 countries, when you cry, you know, here they go, get that girl a tissue. Find a tissue, dry it up. In Africa, they sing. And they just start singing. 4-part harmony and breaking it off, right? And the whole room would just be singing until I stopped crying. And this was profound. The Queen of Lesotho had her royal choir come and sing to this group of 9 African-American women who were professionals traveling throughout the southern region. And this was really good and emotional, except there's a little catch. After they finished singing, they asked us to offer a few songs. And contrary to popular belief, we can't all sing. And so the women in my group were, you know, we did learn a few tunes, so we were even on radio after a while. But my sister, who was traveling with me, we were on our way to Lesotho, actually, and they got up and they met without me, the women. And so when I woke up, my sister said, "Joy, you know we're going to Lesotho today." I said, "Yeah, I know." She goes, "And Joy, we're not singing in Lesotho." So whatever you need to do, Joy, to get your little stuff together, we need you to do that because we're not singing in Lesotho. So I said, I'm good. I got it, holding it down. So we all go to Lesotho, and when they have this meeting, the meeting is actually larger than this room, and people are coming from all over. We got people coming from villages, people coming from the government. Everybody is coming to greet these 9 African-American women. So we're sitting on the stage, and of course things have to be translated. So the guy who's translating, he is actually a descendant of slaves that were enslaved by the Dutch in a place called Umfravakt in South Africa. And Umfravakt means the unexpected in Afrikaans. They were left to die after apartheid ended. But this man had gone back to learn the tribal languages. So each one of us would get up and he translates. So I got up, I was the first one, all the women were looking at me glaring like, you better keep it together. So I got up there, I was good. I said, "My name is Joy DeGruy, and I'm traveling with, and we're trying to build a corridor of relationship with our African sisters." And I sat on down, I thought I did good. My sister, like, thumbs up, everything's good. Translator gets up, starts translating. Then he starts going on and on and on and on and on. And then people start chanting. It's just, so my sister looked at me, I said, so I leaned over, I said, what you say? He goes, "I told him what you said." I said, "I didn't say all that." He said, "Oh, what had happened was," no, he said, well, when I got to the part where you said you were African American, some of the people from remote villages got confused because they thought all Americans were white. So then I had to explain to them that you were the descendants of the ones that had been stolen away. And they were saying to you, "Welcome home." So, everybody was singing. Because I was crying. I was telling My sister looks at me. So everybody's on their feet singing. I'm tore up, sup, in the corner. So this black woman who was in the corner of the room walks all the way towards me, grabs me by the hand and said, "Did you think we would forget you? I am from Lesotho, and Lesotho is my home. If I leave Lesotho, Lesotho is still my home. If I leave Lesotho for 15 years, Lesotho is still my home. We mourned Malcolm and Martin with you. We are so very proud of you. You are African 300 years from home. We just wondered when you were coming back." And then I realized how much of me had been taken from me. So when I came home, I was a little depressed. To Portland, to the hood.
All right.
I was living on 9th, which is no longer the hood. But I was living on 9th, and folks were calling to see if I was coming out. They was worried. People on the trip called, "What's wrong with her? She ain't out." So finally, one day I had to come out because my daughter ran in. She goes, "Mom, there's a little boy outside. He say he gonna beat up Nadim, that's her brother, and he gonna pee on the car too." Which, as you know, could happen in the hood. So I had to go outside. So I go outside to find a crew of young black boys standing. Ain't nobody over 10. My son's trying to hold his own, but he's scared. I walk right over to the little ringleader, and I said, "Has my son done something that I need to know about?" "Yeah, I want to know if he got some kind of eyeball problem." Now, I speak Ebonics, and that kind of went, "What did you say?" "I want to know if he got some kind of eyeball problem. What he staring at?" I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, you want to beat my son up because he was looking at you? Now, I want you to contrast that, because in Africa, when they talk to you, when they would, you know how, this is what black folks do. Everyone. Don't we do that? White people ask you, "God, you have so many friends." But that's an acknowledgement. We walk down the street in the grocery and try not to acknowledge somebody. "What, you too good?" You don't do that, because it's so important in African culture. Or in Africa, it's even a step further. In all the languages, it translates to meaning, "I see you." Yes. And isn't that what we're doing when we do this? Mm-hmm. Now, we don't have a language anymore, but we kept that. Right? So I'm looking at this boy telling me that he gonna beat my son into the ground because he was looking at him. I said, he could have been looking at you because he thought maybe you want to play a little basketball one-on-one. We got the hoop out here. He could have been looking at you because he could have maybe played a little video game. We got a little video game inside. He could have been looking at you because you know the park right down the street on 9th and Fremont. Maybe y'all could almost kick it. Right? So the little kids are looking at me like, whoa. I got a little therapeutic on them. So, finally, I give them my spiel about how we have to keep ourselves safe in the community. And how we have to protect one another and stand together. And then I remembered Africa. And Africa said, "I see you." And African said, "What you looking at? What? What?" Well, let me put that in perspective for you. Because that happens, doesn't it? Let me put this in perspective as it relates to this. This comes out of the article I wrote. And, of course, you can find this article. It's very important. The Journal of Social Work Research and Practice. And you can go on my site and download it as well. So on African American Adolescent Respect, the scale that I wrote. But I want to read this particular excerpt from it so you can put in perspective in contemporary society what I mean about that, what you're looking at. According to Anderson, respect is an essential part of street rules that are strictly enforced and regulated. Simply maintaining eye contact for too long may be viewed as a lack of respect and affront that can escalate into a confrontation. In a similar vein, a snide remark that might otherwise be viewed as trivial may lead to an honor contest. Boy, I wish I had more time to talk to you about that. Where no party backs down until someone is injured. This is taken from a book by Regine Pressois. You can also find that in the book and on the website. This is a quote. "On my way back from school, I saw a young brother on a crowded N train eating sunflower seeds. Between his legs laid a mound of wet, disgusting sunflower shells that he kept enlarging by spitting on the floor. Though visibly frustrated and disgusted by his behavior, no one would dare challenge his position. An older white man motioned to him to stop spitting the seeds on the floor. In response, he spat the seeds with much more animation than before, while effortlessly trying to stare fear into the old man. I made eye contact with him. And he said, "What? What? Believe me, in the world of powerlessness, this is enough for a shootout." He leered at me, then said, "I thought so." And I responded with my generation's favorite confrontation closer, "Whatever." Now we were both sneering, staring, flexing, profiling, and posturing at each other, refusing to yield the power we thought we had, creating two more powerless brothers in a confrontation over bullshit. Two intellectual amputees looking for the upper hand while mentally handcuffed. That's today. That goes on. So I wanted to understand, what is a relationship with that contemporary behavior? And why did that little boy look at my son and feel so threatened by him looking at him? What must he have thought my son was seeing? Because based on what we know about Erickson's model of development, what we know about Piaget, what we understand about human development, is that I attain to my self-concept based upon the appraisal of significant others in my life. So I am not who I think I am, and I am not who you think I am. I am who I think that you think that I am. So what did he think my son believed about him? What did he see peering back at him? He saw peering back what he hated in himself, and he was 10 years old. And I said, what has happened to this little boy that he cannot withstand a gaze? That he so hates the reflection in the mirror that he would destroy my son to destroy the image. That is post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's why I endeavored to look, and I didn't want to look at violence. I wanted to look at the internalized violence, but that wasn't a social problem. So then I looked at young men that hurt each other. So first, on the left-hand side, you have stress variables. The first two variables are what we call baseline variables: violence witnessing and violence victimization. On the right-hand side, you have the dependent variable. In other words, I'm trying to predict this, and that is use of violence. I'm trying to see what the other variables have to do with the use of violence. So now those two baseline variables we already know produce violence. When people witness violence or experience being hurt, they are more likely to be violent. Fundamental basis baseline. The variable at the end is called daily urban habits. Now, this was written by a black man, this scale. Sometimes, how many people have heard of a stress inventory? Basically, they say if you move, you get some points. You get divorced, the dog dies. Anything, you get points. And we should have black on there, huh? Because being black creates a stressor, does it not? Now, I want you to know, being black and living in this skin, we've normalized the stress. Haven't we? It happens so often, and they wonder why you act up when you get to the office. Because by the time you get to the office, you will have been assaulted so many times before you got there. You know, the person that somehow you're standing in front of them, but you're invisible to. By the time you get to work, the person that's sitting right next to you that doesn't say hello to you. You know, because that happens every time. You're invisible at work. All black people are invisible in white environments for a number of reasons. I don't have time to talk about that. But one of them is, in African culture, this is what we always do. And you know what? If I see you this morning, I see you later on, I'm going to do that again. Because it's something we do. And you have people where greeting is perfunctory, so they'll look at you and keep going. Standing right next to you. Or they'll go, excuse me, can you get me those papers? What black people going to say? Hello? Good morning? Good afternoon? Right? Oh, well, hi. Could you get me those papers? Right? Because we have a very different experience living here in America. But one of the things that I understand is not respecting a person, and the idea of the stressors associated with being black, putting electrodes on a black man when a police car drives up behind him. Let's measure that stress. Two books, I have to name these because I'm not going to have time in this talk to talk about them. You must get, after you get mine. One is called Breaking Rank. Norm Stamper, 34-year police veteran, chief of police for Seattle, retired, chief of police for San Diego, retired. Wrote a book called Breaking Rank, has a chapter entitled Why White Cops Kill Black Men. Whole chapter. He told on everybody. And when he broke rank, he took folks down. He took them down. I don't know what happened to this man, but he started telling the truth. There is a slide you have to show. And that is the one where it says, oh, you got it up there. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. He said, I've heard some police officers refer to prostitute slayings or to the slayings of blacks as misdemeanor murders, employing an unofficial code for this, NHI, no human involved. San Diego cops confessed to a myriad other acts of discriminating, including additional dehumanizing references to black on a radio call just at 1113 nigger, 1113 being a code for an injured animal, followed by, a descriptor dog, cat, skunk. It was a pernicious form of discriminating injected with a large dose of misogyny that led to the labeling of the lone female officer in my academy class as a split tail, speculated it had something to do with a woman's vagina. This man goes on to give statistics on how many police officers in every police department across the United States are predators, and saying that if you have a mother, a sister, a wife, a daughter, you should be afraid for them, because they become police officers to prey on women. He told. Now, I got to tell you, the man lives in a cabin on a mountain somewhere in the San Juans. So he knew it was going to happen. This is a situation where, again, I'm not going to have time to cover that, but let me move on and move back to the violence scale. Very good book, very important. I think black folks should keep it on the dash of the car. Because they may say we're paranoid, but folks are following us according to the data there. Another book you need to read, All God's Children. Fox Butterfield wrote the book. Fox Butterfield talked about violence. And here you find out who pushed whom first. Perfect representation, post-traumatic slave syndrome, if you want to see it in the life of a gentleman. That actually was the reason why we started trying youth as adults. His, this particular situation here, let me read this one, because I think this is an amazing one. The last one I'll read. According to Butterfield, what emerged was not just a portrait of the Boskets, the gentleman Willie Bosket, the one who's now serving consecutive life terms. Youth tried as adult because of Willie Bosket. But a new account of the origin and growth of violence in the United States. Violence is not, as many people today presume, a recent problem or a peculiarly urban bane. Rather, it grew out of a proud culture that flourished in the antebellum rural South, a tradition shaped by whites long before it was adopted and recast by some blacks in reaction to their plight. The records also show that the vast majority of people put on trial for violent crimes in antebellum South Carolina were whites. The slaves were believed to be, or thought to be, a gentle people. Butterfield describes two forms of violence among the lower and upper classes: knockdown, drag out, where individuals often had their nose, eyes, or ears ripped from their bodies, and dueling, shooting and killing as a means for gentlemen to settle disputes. Now, I want to put this in perspective in terms of my research that looked at respect. Are you following me? What was modeled is honor and manhood. How does a 16-year-old black male in America get respect? Remember who modeled it. A duel is just a dressed-up drive-by. But what I understand about that how are you a man as a black man in America? If you don't have the material means to assert dominance or control over your resources, you have learned helplessness. Research tells us that too. Or you have hyper-masculinity where I've got to assert my manhood somewhere and somehow. So I'll strike fear in you. Survival, adaptation. Adaptation. How do you learn to survive and adapt in a hostile environment? That's what black people have done all this time. And sometimes we heal crooked. Sometimes we did. But let me tell you this one thing. I don't know, where am I in time? Okay, let me just move, and I'll give you time to give me questions. But I want to give you, let's see, put the slide up in terms of adaptation. What I did discover in my research, by the way, is that all my hypotheses are correct. The more urban hassles, more violence, more victimization, more violence, more witnessing, more violence. Racial socialization, middle variable, written by Howard Stevenson, out of Penn State, black man, He said, this is a resiliency factor, so pay attention to this. He suggested racial socialization as an important way of measuring how black people cope and adapt. Well, what is racial socialization? You help black children, black men, women know that you're walking out on a racially charged battlefield, but you give them armor. I'm going to tell you, you don't have to be worried. You don't have to trust what my high school counselor told me, which was that I wasn't college material. Don't trust that. But you know what? We got your back. You got a God. You got mama, daddy, big mama, big daddy. We here for you. And guess what? You're not a descendant of slaves after all. You're a descendant of captured free men and women. And you know what? It's going to be all right because joy comes in the morning. And we found out that the way you socialize a black child, you have less violence. I look right here in Portland. 200 African-American males, 100 incarcerated, 100 were not. Some of them were in the Rites of Passage program. People know Kevin Fuller. Yeah, I used that as a control group, and I used 100 of them that were incarcerated, and found out that those who were racially socialized were less likely to be violent. But more important was what I discovered about respect. And what I discovered about respect is that when you disrespect black males, and what do they do in prison? They try to break them. You're going to create a prisoner. You're going to create a criminal. You're going to create a sociopath. Because if you disrespect him, you're going to have more violence. And guess what? I put all the variables, multiple regression, stepwise regression analysis. So I wanted to look at all the variables and how they behaved and performed. Highest, greatest predictors of violence. What were the most significant predictors of violence among African American male youth? All 200 of them. After victimization and witnessing fell out, respect. Now, more importantly, what does respect mean? What does respect mean to a black male? I ask people, what does respect mean? I asked white men. White men told me it means earned regard. When I asked black men, they said it's a sense of worth and value. Much deeper, isn't it?
All right. Now, when they tell black people, or when black people are told to stop talking about slavery, stop talking about colonization, stop talking about systemic oppression, what they're really telling is stop connecting the dots. They're telling black people and oppressed peoples that they need to forget and stop connecting the dots. You know, are people disconnected from history or their history, they become much easier to manipulate and easier to gaslight, easier to convince that current inequalities just started or just happened naturally. You know, that's why in the words of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, and he once said that a people that know about yesterday can intelligently argue about today, because today is built on yesterday and tomorrow is built on today. And that is the key point here. You know, studying history is not about promoting victimhood or victim mentality as what some people who gaslight you will say, you know, that talking about slavery and colonization and all those injustices committed towards black people is promoting victimhood and a victim mentality. No, that's not the truth. It is about understanding systems, understanding patterns, and understanding why wealth looks the way it does today, why power looks the way it does, why education, why policing, why the media, and why even beauty standards developed the way they did, or as they look like they do today. Because oppression did not just vanish, and we know that for sure. It never at all ended. Oppression did not go anywhere. It just transformed. It's just existing in a different form, in a different mask, but with the same blueprint, still reinforced by the same people, still oppressing the same people, and still benefiting the same people that reinforce it or that their ancestors constructed it, you know. And the change just, we say change just changed form. Language just changed form. Institutions, they did the same. But many of the power structures, they still remain intact. They never were upset. They've never been challenged. And if you do not understand history, actually, you can be standing inside a system built against you while believing the outcomes are simply your personal failures. And I think most of us today actually are suffering from the same problem. We are inside the systems that initially were never built for us, and we are being gaslighted to believe that all the challenges we face are actually as a result of our personal failures. To some point, maybe some of us on an individual level might have failed on personal level, but from a systemic point of view, these systems were never actually created with our success, with emancipation of Black people in mind, you know. And that's why conversations like this one we've watched today really matter. This is why lectures like Dr. Joy DeGruy's, they do matter even today. Not to keep people mentally trapped in pain, but to actually understand how historical trauma echoes across generations and how awareness actually becomes the first step into healing, rebuilding, and changing the future, really, because people who understand history do not just inherit tomorrow blindly. They begin to try and shape it. Yeah. So really, that's my take from this lecture. I believe there's something you have learned from it as well. If you have something you want to share with me, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up, share it as well to like-minded people, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll really appreciate. So with that, see you in my next video.